You know, every single move you make, every thought you have, even just listening to my voice right now, it's all powered by a tiny electrical storm happening inside your body. Today, we're going to dive deep and uncover the incredible microscopic symphony that makes all of it possible.
So let me ask you this. What do a passing thought, a pufferfish, and a can of bug spray all have in common? I know, it sounds like the beginning of a really weird joke, right? But the answer connects all three to one single fundamental process. Stick with me and you'll see exactly how a thought, a fish, and an insect killer are all linked by the tiny sparks firing inside you this very second.
All right, let's get started and meet the absolute star of our show, the neuron. This little guy is the body's microscopic messenger, the fundamental cell that's responsible for, well, pretty much all communication in your body.
Now, what makes a neuron so special is that it's excitable. And that's a key word. It means it can send signals by rapidly changing its electrical state. It's basically a biological wire and a transmitter all rolled into one. Pretty cool, huh?
Okay, let's clear something up really quick that trips a lot of people up. The difference between a neuron and a nerve. A neuron, that's just one single cell. A nerve, on the other hand, that's a massive bundle of parts from thousands, sometimes millions of neurons, all wrapped together like an information superhighway. For today, we're zooming way in on just one of those single building blocks, the neuron.
So how does this little messenger even work? Well, when a neuron is just waiting for a signal, it's not actually off. It's in what's called a resting state, and it's working really hard to maintain a specific electrical imbalance. The best way to think about it is like a tiny charged-up battery, just holding on to all this potential energy, ready to be unleashed at a moment's notice.
And we can actually measure this charge. A typical neuron just sitting there has a charge of about minus 70 millivolts. Now that negative sign is absolutely crucial. It means the inside of the cell is more negative than the outside. This precise electrical difference, this is the foundation for everything that's about to happen.
But you know, a resting neuron is just the starting line. The real magic happens when it gets stimulated. It doesn't just go from 0 to 100. No, there's this fascinating build-up to a critical breaking point.
So picture this. The neuron is constantly listening to a crowd. It's hearing all these little whispers of chemical signals at its branch-like ends. Some whispers are saying, hey, get ready to fire, while others are saying, nah, stay quiet. These small variable signals cause tiny little fluctuations in the neuron's charge. We call them graded potentials. The neuron is basically adding up all these whispers, all these go and stop signals. And if the go signals get loud enough, if they push the neuron's voltage to a critical tipping point, what we call the threshold, then it is game on. Once that threshold is crossed, there's no going back. An unstoppable all-or-nothing chain reaction is unleashed.
And that chain reaction, that is the legendary action potential. This is it. This is the main event. It's the actual nerve impulse, the signal itself, an incredible lightning-fast wave of electrical activity that just shoots down the neuron.
It all happens in a flash, but let's break it down. So once that threshold is hit, it's like opening floodgates. First, sodium gates fly open, and a ton of positive sodium ions rush into the cell, making the charge spike way up. That's depolarization. Then, just as quickly, those gates slam shut and a different set of gates open for potassium. Positive potassium ions rush out, bringing the charge right back down. That's repolarization. And finally, a tiny little pump gets to work to reset everything, getting the neuron ready to fire all over again.
So how important is that first step where all the sodium rushes in? Well, let's go back to our pufferfish. It has one of the most famous neurotoxins out there, called tetrodotoxin. And what this toxin does is it physically plugs up those sodium floodgates. If sodium can't rush in, you can't have an action potential. And if you don't have an action potential, you have paralysis. It's a seriously powerful defense that perfectly highlights this biological weak spot.
And this whole process doesn't just happen in one spot. Oh no. The action potential in one little section of the neuron triggers the next section to fire, which triggers the next, which triggers the next. It just keeps going down the whole length of the neuron, like a perfect line of falling dominoes.
But nature came up with a brilliant hack to make this signal travel way faster. It's a fatty insulation called the myelin sheath. Instead of a smooth wave, this insulation lets the signal literally jump from one gap to the next, which massively boosts its speed. It's the difference between a local bus and a high-speed bullet train, and it's the reason the pain from stubbing your toe reaches your brain almost instantly.
Okay, so our signal has raced down the length of the neuron at incredible speed. But what happens when it gets to the end of the line? Well, it has to make a leap to the next cell. And to do that, it has to cross a microscopic space called the synaptic gap.
Now,
When the signal gets to the end, the game completely changes. The electrical impulse can't just jump across that gap, so it has to switch tactics. It converts its electrical message into a chemical one by releasing these specialized molecules called neurotransmitters.
Here's how it goes down. When that electrical wave arrives, it throws open channels for a brand new player, calcium. Calcium floods into the cell, and it's the trigger that tells these tiny little sacs filled with neurotransmitters to dump their chemical cargo into the gap. These neurotransmitters then just float across and lock into receptors on the next cell, successfully passing the message along.
And guess what? This step is another critical point of failure. Take the cone snail. It might look slow, but it's an incredibly deadly predator. Its venom has a toxin that specifically blocks those calcium channels at the end of the neuron. No calcium coming in means no neurotransmitter release, which means no signal. The prey is just instantly paralyzed.
These examples from nature, right, the pufferfish and the snails, they really show just how delicate and precise this whole system is. And it's not just them. We humans have learned how to hijack this system for our own purposes, especially when it comes to pesticides.
It's actually fascinating to see all the different strategies these toxins use. So we've seen the pufferfish block the sodium gates, and the cone snail block the calcium trigger. But others are even more creative. Some rattlesnake venoms, for instance, they don't block a signal, they prevent it from ever turning off, causing muscles to just get stuck. Even plants get in on the action. Flowers like the chrysanthemum produce their own neurotoxins for self-defense. And that brings us right back to our can of insecticide. At their core, a lot of common pesticides are just neurotoxins. The chemicals in products like Raid are often based on that very same pyrethrum found in chrysanthemums. They're all designed to disrupt the exact electrical and chemical process we've been talking about, effectively short-circuiting an insect's entire nervous system.
So from a simple thought to the toxins in nature to the stuff on our own shelves, it all comes back to this fundamental dance of ions and electricity. Our entire perception of the world, our ability to move, our very consciousness, it's all built on this incredibly complex and yet surprisingly fragile electrical system. It really makes you wonder what other profound biological mechanisms are humming away right now, hidden just beneath the surface.